So in this episode of BYTECamp, we invited Juliana Ong and Joanna Ko to talk about their experiences in the startup and corporate world. If you want to gain practical college advice, career tips, and many more, then keep on listening. Okay, hello, and welcome to BYTECamp, Byte's first podcast, with this year's theme being Activating Potential. I am Luis Quintos, and I am joined with
Bradley Lau, one of your fellow hosts for this year's BYTECamp. And to all BYTE members and non-BYTE members alike, we invite you to activate your potential in the different and exciting spaces of tech.
That's right. We will be focusing on simple and actionable steps that can lead you to the path you wish to pursue. And for today's episode, our topic will be the differences between startup and corporate work.
Yes, and for today's episode, we invited Juliana Ong and Joanna Ko to share with us their experiences when it comes to this topic.
Okay, so let's begin. So good afternoon, Jong and Joanna. Thank you very much for joining us today on Byte's first ever podcast. And before we start, we just wanted to ask you, how are you doing today? Kamusta naman yung week nyo and kamusta kayo in general?
Okay. Hi everyone. Yeah, I think I'm fine. It's a Thursday. The only thing on my mind right now is that tomorrow's a Friday. It's gonna be the weekend soon. So yeah.
Hi.
Hi, Luis. You said Bradley, right? Because it's Stephen here. It's Bradley.
Oh yeah, you can call me Bradley.
Hi, Luis. Hi, Bradley. Happy to be here. Thanks for inviting me. I'm doing pretty good considering how packed my week has been. Felt really productive and it's been a really fulfilling week actually. So you got me in a good mood. This should be good today.
Promise you, today is going to be a great day. It's going to be chill lang naman because it's going to be all about you, our two precious material girls, our gorgeous girls. And with that, maybe you guys can give our audience a brief background of yourself, like your name and your college and what are you doing right now. Maybe we can start with Joanna.
Sure. So my name is Joanna. I'm 25 years old. I went to college in the States. I was lucky enough to go to Northwestern University, which is in the Midwest. So it was cold most of the time that I was there. Yeah, it was an amazing experience. Everything was new, really exciting. Everything was like an adventure. Currently, I am the head of eCommerce for the Greenhouse. We are the manufacturers of Zenutrients, Curls by Zenutrients. We also have our newest brand, Nature's Nutrients. So everything has nutrients because we take all of the goodness that the earth has to offer and we put it in your bottles of shampoo, conditioner, skincare, lotion, soap, everything. So we're a proudly local, proudly organic company.
Wait,
but
so
I'm excited to talk about everything else I've done today. What?
So when you started taking college, was it online setting already? Did you take it during online class or
Oh no.
you had the experience?
Not at all. The pandemic happened while I was at work. So my college was all offline, IRL.
Must be nice, perhaps.
Don't worry, malapit na.
Someday.
Level 1 na tayo, don't worry.
Level 1 na. How about you, Juliana?
Okay. Hi, I'm Juliana, or you can call me Jong. I think a lot of people in BYTE call me Jong. So I'm actually, how old am I? 21, I think. I'm 21, turning 22. I'm a senior in ITE. So yeah, I was actually part of externals also in BYTE last year. So that should be interesting. Right now, aside from doing school, maybe like twice a week, I'm the head of growth for Meetbit. It's a software as a service startup. It's a calendaring software basically. So yeah, I'm excited to be here and hopefully I impart some wisdom today to anyone listening or watching.
Okay, that's nice to hear. Actually, recently, we started, si Jules, she introduced us to Meetbit and ayun nga, ginagamit din namin siya when we have our meetings and when we plan stuff for our meetings, and it's really helpful, I must say. Like, sobrang...
That's nice to hear.
Legit, as someone who's obsessed with organizing stuff, sobrang helpful siya. And sana magamit pa namin siya in the future. So thank you for that.
Okay, so to start off, just want to ask, like, what are the work experiences and roles that you guys had in the startups and corporate world in the past?
Okay, I can go first because I feel like if Joanna goes first, I'll be too shy to say mine.
No, it's okay. It's okay.
No, it's fine. Everyone's chill right
Okay.
now.
So
Everything's valid.
Yeah, okay. Right now, like I said, I'm currently like fully employed as the growth lead for MeetBit. But before that, I can say my earliest internship that was career related to what I have now is I was a marketing intern for a Singaporean startup. And then I did some like freelance work as a UX researcher for a couple of projects. And then I was also a content lead for an education technology startup. And yeah, now I find myself here as the growth lead for MeetBit.
Oh, cool. So what year did you start with like the internship for like the UX research?
Well, my first internship was actually June 2020. So just when like the pandemic started. And then the UXR projects happened late 2020 as well. So I really overworked myself during 2020, like hataw was the internship, hataw was the projects and stuff like that. And then I took a short break because I realized my mental health matters.
Yeah.
Perhaps she disappeared. Today, she chose to care for herself.
Work.
So that was
Wait,
around your sophomore year. And Great.
So when you started internship, did you find it difficult to adjust, especially in a online setting and everything?
Oh, I forgot. Oh, my first internship was actually in real life, but it isn't really related to what I have now.
Oh.
So yeah, it was really cool. I didn't get paid at all. I didn't even get like allowance for transportation, but it was really fun because like it was in Makati, or was it BGC? Makati, I think. So like after school, like I'd hop, and I was with my friends as well. So after school, like me and my friends would we'd hitch a ride with one of my friends, or we'd ride the P2P and we'd go to Makati. And the internship lasted like 1.5 hours at most. And then after we just eat and then go back home. So it was super chill. But yeah, I wouldn't say it really helped me in my career. And the second one, the marketing internship for the startup, was a bit more legit. I think that's where I learned the most. It wasn't really hard for me to adjust, I feel, because I'm an ITE, so I was familiar with some terms. It was a cool, I guess, plunge into the whole startup world. Yeah.
Low-key, she was on top of everything, perhaps.
Yeah. So maybe maybe Joanna, you could go ahead.
Sure. So the question, remind me again, was my work experience in both.
Yeah.
Yes.
Both the startup world and the corporate world.
Okay. All right. So I actually listed it already just to make sure I didn't forget anything. So don't feel pressured. Again, I'm 25. I've been working for far longer than anyone listening probably has. So in terms of my startup experience, that's actually like where that happened, like in my internships in college. So I started interning the summer after my sophomore year. Very similar to Jong, it didn't really add anything to my career content-wise, but what it did help me understand was, what is it like to be in a work environment? What is it like to go to the office every day, to commute every day, to work with people double my age or just, generally older than me? I worked in Singapore at a freight company, or like a bunkering company, where they basically deliver oil to other boats or to docks and ports and things via boats. So it was a very like logistics business that I was completely bored by. So it didn't really have an influence of where I am today, but it did tell me where I don't want to be. So that was the value of that. So that was kind of corporate, kind of startup, but my real startup experiences were in college. So in junior year, I worked in Two Penny Blue. It's a clothing company in Chicago. I actually worked as their intern, but really it was just them needing a retail associate and someone to do a bit of research on the side. So that was my first startup experience. And then summer after that, I worked in New York. I've been incredibly fortunate with where I interned. I worked at Gabriella Hearst. She's a designer, an amazing designer. I was their intern for merchandising and sales. And then after that, I graduated already. So after I graduated, I went back to New York. I worked again in the fashion industry as an intern. So no shame in taking an internship after graduating. I was also a sales and merchandising intern at Natori, which is a Filipina-owned, Filipina-founded, like East meets West kind of designer, luxury sleepwear brand based in New York. So I worked as their sales and merchandising intern, like I said. I did really well, so they actually promoted me to a full-time sales and merchandising assistant. They actually created that position for me. And that was where I got my first taste of e-commerce, because that was my like channel focus when I was there. Ever since then, I stayed in e-commerce basically since then. So I came back to the Philippines, where I'm a passport holder. I came back to the Philippines, and then I worked in Zalora as an account manager. I worked in P&G as a senior brand manager, also for e-commerce, and which takes me to my current position of head of e-commerce at the Greenhouse.
Okay, cool. But may I just ask, like, what degree did you what did you take up in college?
I majored in economics, BS Econ.
Oh, okay.
Not BS, BA Econ.
Economics.
Yeah.
I see. So, what would you say was like the experience like working in the startup world and the corporate world? Was it like sakto lang? Was it fun? Was it pressuring or something?
Any memorable experiences?
Yeah, I think the biggest difference that I felt was that in the startup world, you're really gonna feel na nangangapa ka. Because even your bosses are like not entirely sure what to do most of the time, right? So as an intern, ano pa, diba? So it's kind of like more that. It's very that. So
Testing the waters muna siya, ganon.
basically, like you're just constantly dipping your toes into new things because that's what the team is doing. Like it's not just the intern. Even my managers were like not entirely sure of what work they had to focus on because there was just so much open space, right? Open water to explore, which is a good thing depending on what you want. But for me, I actually wish that I did the opposite, where I wish I had worked corporate internships first. Because when I was in college, I mean, you guys are in college, you know this, it's this feeling of like, I don't know what I don't know. I have no idea what's out there. So my joining a bunch of other startups or small companies or teams that didn't really know what they were doing, not naman that they're blind, but it was like the heart of sight guiding someone who's blind, right? So I kind of wish that I had gone to bigger companies. I mean, they're a lot more competitive, right? So maybe there's a bit of my ego that influenced my decision when I was in college, but there would have been a lot more richer learnings, more connections I could have made as an intern in a bigger corporate setting. Yeah.
So what you're trying to say is like you would recommend to college students that they take internships with bigger corporations rather than working with newly startups, since bigger corporations can give you the experiences that you want, that you can apply to other fields.
That's what I wish I did for myself, knowing that I enjoy the corporate setting now, right? Retrospect is always 2020, or what is it? Whatever that saying is. But so you always know exactly what you're supposed to do in the past when you're in the present. So that's what it is for me. It's hard to generalize for everyone because working in a startup is also incredibly valuable. Again, it depends on your objective. Because if you really see yourself as a dead set entrepreneur, like I don't see myself reporting to anyone, I don't want a strict desk job, I don't want to be an employee, then working in a startup is a great way to kind of test that hypothesis because that's going to be your life, diba?
Yeah.
It really depends. That's why it's really important to have an objective, or at least be strategic in where you choose to work.
Yeah, and it's important to have like an idea of what you want down the road. Like even if you're still in college, like obviously you still don't know what you're gonna do for the rest of your life, but it's still important to have that like some sort of like tunnel vision, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. Some sort of guess as to what you might like. The way I like to put it is just have a hypothesis and test it versus going into something with completely nothing to benchmark yourself or evaluate yourself against. Right? Just have some sort of guess and see if it's correct.
Okay, great. So how about you, Jong? How was your experience?
I think I'm gonna echo Joanna here. Like, I think startups, like people tend to glamorize startups, and they're probably thinking of a startup that is like heavily funded on and with like 100,000 users. But if we're talking about startups in its early stages, it's actually pretty messy. Like everyone's just on their toes. People have to stay within the budget, work within limited manpower, but then like grow exponentially. So I think that early part of startups is super challenging, and I think when people tend to think of like startups or corporate, they just see the more like fluid, more spontaneous side of startups. But I don't think they recognize that part of like early startups and how most of the time it's right. Like no one really knows what they're doing, so it can get pretty rough. Yeah. I think looking back, when I was, I guess, the earlier half of college, I didn't really want to, I was complaining. I was thinking like, I don't want to have a desk job. Like I want to be more spontaneous. Like I want to, I want my ideas to matter in a company. So I was thinking, okay, it's startups for me. But I think if I were to, go back and tell myself then, it would be like, okay, you can go to, like, you don't, how do I say this? Like, I think before it was only either corporate or startups. But if I were to go back, I'd say like work for a more matured startup or a matured tech company. So that way, like, yeah, you still have your ideas or your work still has impact. But I guess you can also learn from like mentors, you can learn from your boss or something like that. So I'd say somewhere in the middle. Like I wouldn't say go make your own startup. I wouldn't say go to corporate. I'd like go find a more mature startup. Yeah, I think that's it for me.
So even if it's a bit more confused, like what are the highlights of working in a startup? Like memorable experiences, ganon.
I guess literally like every decision you make matters. So like if the founders and CEO and the whole team decides, okay, we're doing this, and it flies, and I guess you also get that recognition that you made the right decision. But then likewise, it can go down and not fly. Another part is like, I guess you get really close with the people you work with, because literally you work with them all the time, 24/7. You're just talking. And I think another side is also like the yearning for exploration and curiosity. I think when you're working in corporate, like, most of the time you're being told what to do, so you just do it. But in startups, you have to think for yourself. You have to be on your toes. So I guess the brain is stimulated, and I enjoy that because I'm a creative. So yeah.
So like in terms of culture naman between startups and the corporate setting, like what would you say is the main difference between working in these two different settings? Maybe you can start with Joanna.
Yeah, I actually want to resonate or kind of echo what John was saying, because there is an air of I don't want to use the word dictatorship, but there's this in corporate settings, like there's a sense of you've got to do it this way because this is the only way that's going to not upset other people, if that makes sense.
Yes.
And that's for the corporate setting.
For corporate, yeah, for corporate.
Much more structured, right?
Yeah, that's a much better way to put it. There's a lot more structure, there's a lot more system that you need to abide by. Because I'm pulling from my experience at P&G now. I was there as a senior brand manager for eCommerce, where I handled pretty much all of the brands under P&G. Like Olay was the biggest one. I was also handling like Gillette, Oral-B. At a point, I was handling all of their hair brands. Yeah, it was wild. Anyway, in P&G, there's like so many checks and balances and I's to dot and T's to cross para hindi magalit yung ibang tao, right? Or para hindi ka matatanong ng mahirap na tanong. Basically, right? Like, and the difficult part about that is that when you're new, not everything is going to be onboarded to you right away. So in a sense, I want to make this connection that even if you're in a corporate setting, there's still there's still a mindset of entrepreneurship that you need to have, because in entrepreneurship, it's a lot of like hunger and being foolish and like knowing that you don't know the answer, so you go out and look for the answer, right? Or sometimes it's also asking the right question so that when you do go out for the right answer, tama din yung sagot mo. Even in a corporate setting, I mean, especially in e-commerce, maybe it's just my experience because e-commerce is so new. There's so many instances that I had to pull on my experiences from when I was back in a startup where no one was able to tell me what to do, right? And I needed to kind of structure the problem, frame the situation in a way that I could understand. And my boss wasn't telling me how to do these things, right? My coworkers weren't telling me how to do these things. I knew my job the best. So in that sense, that's kind of where the worlds merge. I think there's a lot of, it's very easy to like say they're different. And like you either go startup and corporate and the skill sets are distinct and they're not going to cross over. But the reality is that like, I mean, that's not the case. It's true, like finance, HR, like accounting, all of the budget approvals, pitching to your boss, all of that is a lot harder in corporate settings. But without the skills that I got in my startup experiences, I don't think I would have succeeded in my corporate setting as well as I would have. I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, it did. So
Okay.
like most of the time, do you find yourself figuring things out yourself?
Yeah, I think that's just the reality of having a job. It's the reality of life, right? Like it's a severe misconception that when you enter a corporate job that your hours, minutes, and seconds are dictated for you. That's super not the case, right? It's probably less so for startups because you probably won't have like a general manager to report to. You won't have like a public financial statement to publish, right? It's probably not like that, but the reality is it's still up to you how you choose to spend your morning. It's up to you who you reach out to for meetings, right? If you want to talk to someone in regional office versus someone in a local office, there's still a lot of decision points that are entirely completely up to you and might just be as confusing as in a startup situation.
Okay, thank you so much, Joanna. What about Jong? In terms of culture, what would you say is the main difference between working in a startup compared to corporate and vice versa?
Yeah, well, I haven't really worked in a corporation yet, but I remember my boss for my first internship. She actually worked in P&G for like 20 years before she decided to, build a startup for herself and stuff like that. And so I also had the same question. I asked her, okay, so what are the pros and cons about going to startups versus corporate? Because I feel like everyone, maybe in IT, we go through this like point where there are like two roads in front of us and we're not sure where to go. And what she told me was like, for corporate, she started there. And so what she liked about it was that one is the network, because everyone, well, at least she worked in P&G for 20 years, so everyone there is stellar. So she was able to build a strong network. She was able to connect with the right people. And then second is also the structure, I guess. I know it's something like, I guess for me, it's something I dislike. Like the word structure, I don't really like it because I'm a creative person, so I prefer to be a bit more spontaneous. But the structure is also really important because like, let's say as a senior, you start a startup, but you don't know anything about structures. So everything's kalat, right? And I'm kind of kalat. So looking back now, like I would have preferred to be a bit like molded first, like be familiar with the structures that these corporations have been using and are proven and tested before like going on to try something out for myself. So that's like the pros. And for startups, Saman, she really just said like, I guess it's more meaningful because every decision you make counts. And yeah, it's more spontaneous. So I guess the job is maybe a little bit more fun because you control your schedule, you control your time, and you control like what's best for the company and stuff like that. So that's what I can say for this question.
So for both startups and corporations, like what makes it unique?
I think I can chime in here. I think this is actually a hard question. So I was reading the list of questions before I came in today, and I really struggled at this one because like I almost feel like it's a false dilemma. I don't know if I can be so bold to say that, like it's startup versus corporate. I feel like it really depends on the company, it depends on your boss, it depends on the role. Because the danger that we fall into when we start to generalize what it means to be in a startup or what it's like to be in a corporate setting, then that's the only truth that will ever be, right? You're going to start to tunnel vision into this is what this means, and who knows what you're going to shut out later on. Because of like preconceived notions and generalizations. Like we all know generalizations are bad, which is also generalization. But you know what I mean? Like it's so difficult to just say that this is the truth forever and ever. Amen.
Yeah.
So,
Amen, sister.
but to attempt to at least answer the question, that was a big caveat. But to attempt to answer the question, I think I'll speak for corporate, you have a lot more money to work with. The budgets are way bigger, and what that means is while not every decision will have a huge impact, not every decision will also have a huge impact. You can make mistakes, right? Kung magkamali ka, okay lang. You still have $200,000 to play with. You're fine, right? Versus $200,000 might be the entire budget for the entire year for a startup, right?
True.
So the stakes are higher in startup, which is awesome if you want to be adventurous and you want to take risks and make amazing things happen. That's amazing for that. But if for me, right, like I was in a stage of I want to test and learn. I don't know what works. I don't know what makes a consumer excited. I want to know what makes a customer decide to check out and give me your bank details to pay me, right? Like I needed to be able to test and learn little by little before feeling comfortable. I still haven't even gotten to that stage of having my own startup because I want to know more about all of those test and learns and experiments and things like that so that I can, just kind of build up my skill set and have a deeper understanding before I go, I don't know if I can say this, before I can go balls deep into it, right? So that's for me, what I like about the corporates.
How about you, Jong?
Yeah, I'm not sure if I'm answering the question, but I want to like continue the flow of what Joanna said about, there's an upside and downside of like having that much impact in a company. So when it's like, when it works out, you feel like validated, right? But then it's also pretty scary because like every decision you make, it can impact the company. And sometimes I find myself thinking like, crap, I just want to be like someone's employee so I don't have to think for myself. Like I just want to, like sometimes you can get lazy. I'm just like, I just want to follow instructions and like do my job. Because when you're leading, it's like, it takes way more time. Like you really have to think of your decisions, what's the next, the possible consequences, etc. So yeah, I agree. Like when you think, like when we generalize startups and corporations, it can also, I guess, wound us because we're thinking in a tunnel vision, like this is forever going to be this way and this is forever going to be this way. But yeah, I think it's also why earlier I said, like looking back, I tell myself to go join like the middle ground because I feel like it's a good balance between the two. And I think at this point where I don't know much, but I also don't really want to be constricted-ish, like I think the middle ground would be a good like learning place, good exploration place. Yeah,
I super agree with that because that's actually where I am now. Like my current position in my current company, it's a 10-year-old brand, so it's not young, but it's not old, right? Like it's literally in between. We also don't have any like Series A, Series B, whatever seed funding. Like this is money that has been accumulated over the past 10 years. So it's not also like super corporate. There's not a lot of pressure from stakeholders or shareholders, and it still has that on the ground feeling despite being around for 10 years. And I have to say, like, I'm so grateful because it's like the best job I've ever had. The culture is incredible. We have control, but at the same time we have safety nets. right? We've control because, it's a small team. We have a safety net because it's a 10-year-old brand. We have clout, we have sticking power. And so I super want to just encourage anyone listening, find that middle ground. It's hard. I know, like, you can't just type in middle ground company on Google and find something, right? So it's gonna take a bit of searching, a bit of asking people or asking around your network, or just generally keeping your eyes open. But if you find a gem like that, I think you'll get the best of both worlds. Definitely.
Yeah, I agree. I think people, we tend to think that it's black or white, like startup or corporate, but no, it's like a spectrum. You can go with the grays.
Depende lang talaga sa goal.
Yeah.
Like, mahanap din nila yun, no? If they're able to find the middle ground and disregard all these generalizations about startup and corporations.
Exactly.
The challenge is just you have to find it.
And sariling sikap din siya, no?
Yes.
So, actually, out of curiosity, but you didn't hear this from me. Many say that working in a corporate is a 9-to-5 job, but in a startup, it's 24/7. Like, how true is that?
Go, Jong.
Okay, yeah. I think that's pretty true. It's true for startups in its early stages. So if you're a founder, then you always have to be thinking about something. You're gonna go on with sales calls with clients who are halfway around the world. Sometimes I stayed up till 3 a.m. to do a demo or something like that. So yeah, people think, okay, if it's a startup, it's flexible. I control my schedule. But then I think it depends also if you're a founder, if you're an early stage startup, then it definitely isn't as glamorous as they portray to be. And then I hear some people in corporate, they say they're there from 9 to 5, but they also tell me, I'm not really working. So I'm just like, what? So yeah.
make it make sense.
Yeah, I think it's different for different people. I don't really have a straight answer to it.
Oh.
I can weigh in on the 9 to 5 thing. If you like your job, it's not just the 9 to 5. If you care about what you're doing, if you care about what your boss believes in, if you care about the vision of the company, it's hard for it to become a 9 to 5 because you like your job. And if you're doing something you like, it doesn't really feel like work. Right? I mean, that's ideal. I'm
basically you're not working a day in your life.
Yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong. Some days are going to suck, right? You're still going to get stressed, still going to get fatigued. But I'm guessing the friends of Jong, maybe they just don't like their job. Maybe their boss doesn't care about them, right? And those jobs exist. It sucks, but they exist, right? And I want to share, I've had basically 2 corporate experiences. I don't know if Zalora counts as corporate, but relatively, I think it's a bigger e-commerce company. Mm-hmm. In Zalora, that was straight up just 9 to 6. When I left at 6 p.m., I did not think about Zalora, right? And that was because I was actually genuinely, I don't want to taint anyone's perception of Zalora. If you're applying to Zalora, go lang sis, they've probably improved. But when I was at Zalora, I felt really disengaged. I didn't really like the work that I was doing. I didn't feel inspired. And so when I left the office at 6, I was like, okay, yeah, I'm going home. Bye. I'm not taking anything home. But at P&G, I love e-commerce. It was a place where I learned everything. I loved the people I was working with at Lazada, at Shopee, and everything. And because I cared about the results I was driving, there's also a lot of pressure. But because I cared about the results I was driving, I was up till 2 a.m. too. Encoding Facebook ads and planning my media and planning my budget. And the reality is you will stay up late if you want to stay up late. Again, hard to generalize.
So you enjoyed your stay more in P&G compared to Zalora?
I don't think I would use the word enjoy.
Enjoy?
I think my work at P&G was a lot more meaningful than my work.
Oh, I see.
I learned a lot more.
So what you're basically saying is that it doesn't really matter if you're working in the corporate side or a startup. What matters now is you actually love what you're doing.
Exactly.
And one way or another, if may sariling sikap, they could find the middle ground.
Yeah. And this is what I always heard, and now what I always repeat. You're not, especially with your first job, but this is still true for any job, you're joining because of your boss, ideally. Less so for the role, less so for the company. For the pay, of course, that's a reality, right? But barring pay, join because you admire, respect, or have a deep desire to learn from your boss or your manager. Because the reality is they will be your first mentor. They will be the closest person to you ideally. So if you already feel that distance from the boss, or if the boss doesn't really know what they're saying, they're making too many sweeping statements in the interview, maybe you don't even get to meet your boss, right? That's like, you don't really know what you're getting into. And that's going to have a huge impact on your experience.
Learning so much from our speakers, and I'm sure our audience, who are mostly comprised of college students, are curious to know some of the tips on how they can go about their college life with their career in mind. So with this, what is an important mindset or trait that students must have, especially if they're in the process of building up their work experience?
Okay. Well, I think, in my opinion, people shouldn't be caged with, I guess, with the like careers that are related to their course or careers they think their peers are taking. Like, I remember when I was in BYTE last year, Joanna, we also had an interview with her, and she was telling us about like how some internships, like the one with hers and like the shipping dock, it just made her realize that it wasn't for her. So it wasn't a bad thing. If you think about it, it was still growth, because she realized like, okay, that route is not for me. So I'm going to like, eCommerce. That's how she found eCommerce. So I think people shouldn't be too constricted. Like, oh, my course is like maybe BS like journalism. I wouldn't have any use like marketing for a startup or something. Like, no, college is the best time to do that. College is the best time to dip your toes into whatever you're interested in. Yeah, and I think that's just what I want people to know, because they might feel like, oh crap, I need to stick to an internship that's related to my course so I can build off of it. But what if at the end of the day you don't really like your course? There's still so many avenues to explore in college that you may lose when you graduate, because I think when you graduate, then there's the expectation that you need to find a job already. So that's why I think, yeah, internships are the best way to explore your interests and stuff like that.
Okay, cool.
How about you, Joanna?
Yeah, very similar. I wrote down here in my notes to just learn and be open to learning, whatever way, shape, or form that might take. And this was a lesson I learned the hard way. Like I mentioned, I worked in fashion when I was in college because, like, I love fashion. I still love fashion. I love clothes. I love being like Kikai and fashionista and all of that stuff. And even though I was an economics major, I was like, I just want fashion. I don't want to work for a company if it's not to do with clothing or styling or whatever. And because I kind of boxed myself into that, I only really found e-commerce. I only really realized my skills in sales and marketing after graduating, right? And like, there's no point crying over spilled milk. Like, it's already happened. But who knows what I would have unlocked or what opportunities I would have uncovered if I had taken a more broad approach in my post-shipping internship life, right? So I did that one thing. Like, I realized I didn't like this, but then I focused too much on what I knew I liked, right? I kind of lost that sense of adventure, that sense of it's okay to take a risk and do something different, right? I stuck too much to what I knew. But at the same time, like, be strategic. I think I said this already before, like, be strategic with where you choose to learn. Because if you're open to learning anywhere from anyone about anything, then kalat din yung mga learnings mo, right?
It's going to be scattered.
Yeah, like, who knows how reputable your source is? Who knows how good this company actually is, right? Like, I won't name names, but like, I know someone who applied for an internship and then it sounded all great and stuff, but then like last minute the JD was completely flipped. Like, the JD was not what was advertised, and then suddenly it started getting really sketchy, and like he was asked to do certain things that he wasn't even qualified for. So he was like, why am I learning this from you? Like, I'd love to learn it, but why you? I chose you for another reason, right? So they left. Like, it's also that sense of exercising your right to be picky and to choose where you decide to say, okay, now I'm open. Now I'm a sponge. teach me everything, master.
Teach me everything.
Right? Yeah.
Let me absorb all the information.
Right. Before getting vulnerable, you want to make sure you're safe and secure first, right? So.
And would you say na internships are a must-have or nice to have when it comes to gaining work experiences in college? How about Juliana?
Okay, well, I can speak for myself here. I think learning experiences are a must-have, and internships are part of those learning experiences. So for me, when I was interning in a couple of startups, that was how I was like introduced to the way startups structure themselves, how they go about like their workflow, what sprints are. And so I feel like if I were to just start my own, it would be a learning experience, but then it wouldn't have the guidance and the knowledge I learned from internships, which is what I enjoyed. But it doesn't have to be purely internships. Like I know some people, I guess they take it in like a quantitative approach. Like they just keep applying to internships that may turn out meaningless. Like what Joanna said, you want to find an internship opportunity that gives you value as well, not just for the sake of like stamping it on your resume. So that's what I kind of want to make that clear. Like you go for an internship, it's a must-have for me but then it has to be something of value. Like you have to like you give something to the internship, but obviously like it's a give and return relationship. They also give some value back to you.
So you'd recommend it's better to take an internship that gives you something, the experience that you want and an experience that you can actually learn from, than taking on a number of internships like sobrang malilito ka lang doon.
Yeah, definitely. I think people like there's no rush. I believe like people won't look at the number of internships you have, but then if they look at what you actually achieved in the internship, like it's empty compared to like maybe one or two internships with really impressive results, and that would be way more impressive.
So how can college students gain work experience? Would it be through their personal projects, org works? And from your experience, like what has helped you gain work experience?
Is it me?
Yeah,
Okay.
Jong. Yes.
Okay. Well, internships are one, but definitely, I think it depends on the field you're in. So back when I wanted to learn more about UX, I joined an org, UX Society in Ateneo, and that's where I was able to learn like hands-on, like a project-based UXR experience. So that was pretty fun. I think, I guess what's tough about personal projects, if you don't have a mentor, like you're doing it, but no one's gonna tell you what's right or wrong. So I think it's great to learn these technical skills in an org setting because you have like mentors who are students who've been there before you, but it's also kind of free range. Like it's still your personal project. There's just someone like maybe a judge or an alumni telling you, guiding you what to do. So that was nice. Another example was when I was writing content for a previous startup. That was pretty cool because I always considered myself like a casual writer, but then I guess I was insecure about my writing skills. And so, but then in that position, I was forced to like churn out like a newsletter once every 2 weeks. So it's something like I couldn't say no to. It just became a habit. And eventually that skill, I guess, of communication, of trying to be witty with titles, it grew on me, and that's how I learned how to do it. And it didn't seem like a big deal anymore. Like after a few weeks, I could write like a whole newsletter in like a day. So that helped me a lot too.
Thank you for that advice, Jong. And how about you, Joanna? Would you say that internships are a must-have or a nice-have when it comes to gaining work experience in college?
I love the way that Jong put it, where gaining experience is must-have, and internships are one way to do that. The way I like to think about it is internships are a great conversation starter. They're great door openers. They might get you the interview, but like Jong said, if in those like 6 internships that you did in 1 year, you reported to work like once a week, or like you barely did anything, all you did was attend or shadow meetings, Then when you get to the interview, wala ka na masasabi. Oh, what did you get done? What was your impact? What was your results? It's just silence, right? Because you didn't really get to do much. Versus like having these really meaty, meaningful, impactful experiences and learnings and takeaways and results, however you want to put it. If you have 1 or 2 experiences that give you that, you will not only get the interview, when you get to the interview, you're going to have such a rich conversation with your interviewer because they're going to have so many questions and you're going to have so many answers and so many numbers to share and so many strategies that you uncovered because deep nga yung work, right? Malalim yung trabaho. And notice that I didn't say internship. I didn't say job. Like you could hold an officer position, you could hold a leadership position. It could even be your thesis, right? Where you gain like this amazing insight on how, I don't know, consumers like to think about X, Y, and Z. And that would be just as valuable because, again, you were so deep into it that you can kind of take the interviewer through all of the layers of thinking. Because at the end of the day, like, you need to understand how you learn, you need to understand how you process information and how that reflects into your strengths and into the weaknesses that you need to improve. Like that's what learning is in college, like for work experience. It's how do I think, how do I learn, what am I good at, what am I not? And how can all of those mesh into something or into a career, into a role, into a purpose that makes sense for me.
Tamang diskarte lang talaga yung kailangan when it comes to like being nitty-gritty about the internships that you're going to pick.
Yeah, and I want to add, because I've interviewed a lot of college students from Ateneo, from LaSalle, from UP, and there are a lot of people who hold officer positions and their resume makes it sound really good and it's so interesting, and then the internships also sound really good and interesting. They get to the interview, they only ever talk about the internship. I'm like, how about your officer position? What did you do in this org? And then they say like 2 sentences. But I'm like, double click, say more, because you have so many cool things on your resume, right? I've noticed a lot of students discount or undermine the achievements in these orgs. Like imagine, you're in BYTE, like you guys spend so much time together. You put so much time, energy, effort into your projects. Like what a shame to not show that off and like, use that as a great conversation starter in that interview to give them an idea of how smart you are, how good of a worker you are, what amazing work ethic you have, what results you've achieved, right? Just because it's not an internship, just because you're not getting paid, doesn't mean it's not valuable.
Nakakatakot mag-interviewer pala to si Joanna.
All I'm doing is trying to make people show themselves off. Like that's always my objective. Like I'm not trying to make it hard for them. I'm just saying, I think you're better than you're making yourself sound. And if you're not going to give me that right away, I don't think I can trust you in the workplace because you need to give your best right away.
Wow. That was actually really nice.
I'm overwhelmed. It's so nice to hear.
So insightful.
Like the internships, they would look good on paper, pero pagdating na sa interview, like when it comes to like the experiences, sobrang konti lang masishare nila.
Yeah, it happens. Or sometimes it's just not being prepared enough, not knowing your shit. Like it's just not like even if you did amazing things in the internship, by the time they get to the interview, they don't have any numbers. They don't have any 2x, 3x, 1.5x kind of comparisons to give me. So I don't know the range of what you've done, right? So part of doing well in the interview, I don't want to jump the gun or preempt any questions, but part of like doing the interview is really reflecting what you did back in the internship. What did you do in this project? And because you know you're going to have to do that for the interview, when you're choosing projects and when you're choosing internships, you better choose wisely so that you have a lot to talk about when you get to that interview.
So you know what to say to the HR.
Yeah, basically.
Great.
So speaking of interviews, like what other tips would you give to college students in terms of resumes, LinkedIn profiles, and cold emails? Like how important are these?
Actually, I don't have much to say. I feel like because most of the internships I landed, I got because of either a mutual connection or like a professor. So it was more of like word of mouth than me going on LinkedIn, on Facebook, and stuff like that. But in general, because I know what you guys are gonna ask me later on, so I just want to finish it because I don't have much to say. I think earlier I mentioned, like, you know, we're in college, you're free to explore. If you're interested in this, even if it isn't really a part of your college course, it isn't in the same field, I like encourage you to go for it. But sometimes the reality we face is that you can't just go for things because you're interested in it, because especially if there's a lot of competitors, if there's other people applying, like your drive or your interest for that role, I guess for the interviewer, it isn't going to be enough sometimes. So what I recommend is, like, if you're applying for something new, you never had like an internship position for it in the past, you didn't have previous org experience doing it, I think you should at least try to like come up with a personal project, or at least demonstrate that you've at least tried to do this before going into it. So that's super important. Like, I understand, because I'm super interested in a lot of stuff, but it feels bad. Like, I always feel discouraged because I don't have anything to show for. Like, I don't have an internship, a past internship. I never did it for an org. And when I was reviewing like resumes of people who were going to intern for Meatbit, I felt for a lot of these people. Like, they weren't related to startups or tech at all, or business, but they were interested, right? And what I appreciated was them like showing me like their personal projects or their personal like attempts to like I guess develop themselves in that skill or in that field, and I appreciated that. So maybe for everyone out there who wants to try something new or who wants to dip their toes into a certain field but who have nothing to show for, I really recommend like you guys try to go on a personal project, or if the opportunity arises and there's an org for it, then try that first, and that's still super valuable. It doesn't have to be a past internship experience or anything. Yeah, that's it.
But Jong, I feel like word of mouth, mutual connections, those are like the most powerful ways to get your foot in the door.
That's true too. Yeah.
It's important to have like connections, and it's basically like putting yourself out there too. Is that important?
Yeah, because if you're referred to by someone, then they're kind of vouching for you already. So there's that trust, right? Like, okay, so I know this person, and this person is telling me that this person is also okay. So I guess that's a pro. Yeah. But yeah, that's all I have to say. I'm speechless.
Yeah, but they're also putting themselves on the line, right? When you're vouching for someone.
Yeah, that's true.
Something goes wrong, something goes south.
I think Joanna had an experience with that. Last I recall, when I interviewed her like last year, she was talking about something.
Really?
Yeah, actually, I think I'm counting. Wait lang. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I have 6 experiences here. Only 2 of them I got on my own. Like, only 2 of them came from like a cold application. Like 4 out of 6 of my positions I got from some sort of connection, or was born from some sort of like referral thing, right? Like, just because I get referred, just because you get connected, doesn't mean it's a shoo-in. It's not guaranteed, right? You're still gonna have to work to pass the interview. You're still gonna have to impress HR. You're gonna have to impress your line manager. But getting my foot in the door was so much easier. Like, I was just able to sit down. Like, sometimes all you need is to get the interview, right? And then that's it. And that's usually the hardest part, is getting the interview. Because imagine these HR officers, even sometimes a line manager, like I'm a hiring manager, and sometimes I'm the one who's going through all of the resumes. Like, there's just way too many people sometimes, and it gets really overwhelming. And all it is like 500,000 PDF documents and Word documents. Some aren't even formatted right? Like, some have fonts too big, and it's just like, it gets really overwhelming. Yeah. So if you can use a connection, if you can use a referral to just get your foot in the door, like that, do not underestimate the power of that. And what Bradley said, I just want to address that. Like, someone is putting their name on the line to vouch for you, but like, if they're already willing to do that from the get-go, that should be a vote of confidence on your side. no one is going to refer you if they don't think you're going to do well. Right? Because everyone's aware of that. Everyone's aware that they're putting their reputation out in the open by referring someone. So if you've already been referred, you're good. No point thinking about that.
Yeah, I want to like second on that because I remember when people were applying like as interns, I'd always like ask around second opinion because I think, a resume can only tell you so much. Like they can, you can be really articulate. You can say whatever you want on a resume, but then when the time comes and you actually hire the person, it turns out that person isn't who they proclaim to be. So that's why I think it's super powerful, the referrals, because like this person is vouching, like they know you personally, they know your work ethic, and they say, yeah, she's okay. So yeah, that's super powerful. Mm-hmm.
John, can I ask John a question?
Yeah, go ahead.
Sure.
No.
You mentioned that you have like secured stuff through like mutual connections and networks. Like, how did you start that process? Like, did you say like, hey, I'm looking for an internship, or did someone approach you? Like, how did you make that happen?
Well, the first one was my professor, and I think I asked him a lot of questions, and so I think he felt like I'd be interested for the role, and he gave it to me. The other one was, I think my friend's dad was like the head of the startup incubator. So I got lucky. He was like, okay, pick whatever startups. And we were like, it was literally on the wall because, incubators have so much startups. And we were literally like just picking, okay, I think I feel this. And so, yeah, we got in. And I think the last one was also by a professor for the like UXR project. So his friends were looking for people to do like the UX of their website, and so he referred his students because he knew we were dabbling into like UX and UXR. So that's how I got it. And did you like with your friend's dad, for example? Like, I don't think he just approached you and said, "Do you want a job in a startup?" Like, yeah. Did you bring it up in conversation? Oh yeah, definitely. So we were talking with my friend, and he was like, "Oh hey, I can ask my dad because my dad is blank, blank, blank." So it really, it still came, I guess, we had to initiate it still. It just wasn't like thrown at us like, here, this is for you. Like there still had to become, like we still had to approach the person. And I guess that is already, showing up and taking the initiative to say like, oh, I want to intern or something. It's already like better than just waiting for someone to approach you and say, okay, I have an internship position, do you want it? Yeah,
raising your hand. That's actually how I got my like full-time job at Notori in New York. I mean, like from graduation.
I remember that story.
Yeah. All I did was I raised my hand. Like it was the last month of my internship. It was like a 4-month internship. And I was like, I do not want to go back to the Philippines. I want to stay in New York, right? I want to use my freaking visa. So I approached the president of Notori. I was like, I mean, screw it. If he ignores me, like, I'm just an intern. It doesn't matter. But like, if he replies to my email, awesome. So I emailed him. I was like, hi, Ken. I just wanted to ask for your advice or ask for your help. My current internship at Notori is ending, and I'm really looking to stay in New York. Would you have any recommendations or advice to give someone looking for a job in the fashion industry? Right. And then he replied. I was like, oh my God, he replied.
He replied. It's him.
Yeah. And then he said, do you have 30 minutes tomorrow? And I was like,
wow.
Yeah, sure. And then in those 30 minutes, he said, I've heard about the amazing work you've done with us. Are you interested in working with us? And I said, duh. And that's how
I'll take it.
Yeah, that's how it started. And that's how the ball started to roll with, oh yeah, the Joanna's interested in staying full-time. Do you have anything for her? Asking all of the different VPs of whatever, heads of whatever. And it was just because I raised my hand. And I think Jong has the same experience, just putting yourself out there for people to take notice.
Yeah, so basically showing up counts, right?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, it's already half the work.
Exactly.
And like you have nothing to lose. It's either they reply or no. If they don't, then that's the worst that it could get, right?
Exactly. There's no point in being shameful. That's my biggest learning. I had so much jahe in college. I wish I didn't, but I had so much shame.
Yeah, that's true. I remember I was speaking to like the head of Gcash before, and he was we were curious, like, because they hardly released like publicly that they were looking for interns, and he was telling me it's because there's so many people always just knocking on their inboxes saying like, hey, can I intern for this role, blah blah blah, and so they actually take them in, and that's why there's no empty internship slots to fill, because people have just been like messaging on email, on LinkedIn, even if there was no like public post that they were looking. So yeah.
Wow, that's interesting. Yeah, we're nearing the end of this session, but before we let you guys go, what advice would you give to college students who are still unsure of which path they want to take when it comes to their work and career? So maybe you could go first, Joanna.
Let me look at my notes with now.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, here. No, I remember what I said. I did some free thinking because I knew I was gonna freeze. What I wrote was to take your time and enjoy your youth. It's so cliche, but like I feel like especially nowadays there's so much on like social media, like especially in like an honors course like ITE or even in Ateneo, like a high achieving college. There's so much pressure to like be productive all the freaking time. It's so important to like overachieve. And that's true. I mean, it's important to like make use of your time, but like you're only going to be 18 to 21 once, and 18 to 21 is like the world is your literal oyster. Like you're just full of potential, and like I don't know how to put this well, but like you're only going to be able to go to like bars and drink and do stupid things and still be able to go home to your mom and dad like it's nothing. Yeah, that's like one of the only times you're going to be able to do that. So do that. Right? Like especially now that
I love what you said.
not to be a bad
yung kapatid mo nga it's LU.
I know, exactly. And it's great that he's there, because when you start working and you start feeling the pressure of having to make money for yourself or making money for your family or to support whoever is in your life, not naman that your world gets smaller, but it's not as free anymore. There's more to lose the older you get. So take your time. Like there's a lot of talk about internships and working and getting experience and learning, but everyone works at their own pace. Just because you don't have an internship at the age of 20 doesn't mean you're a failure. Like by no means are you a failure. You're still in college, right? Like you're still studying, you're still waking up in the morning, you're still able to brush your teeth. Like take your time. But at the same time, don't slack off. I mean, like, don't get me wrong, but sometimes it's just nice to hear a reminder of that it's okay to enjoy your youth. I wish I did.
Right. But I think what's more important is like striking the balance, right?
Yeah.
Enjoying and like working on something for the future.
It was so heartwarming.
Yeah. And honestly, with like everyone your age, it's so easy because to get swept up in being productive. So I thought I would just say have fun with it. Hopefully people remember to have fun.
How about you, Jong? What advice would you give to us college students?
I see the same. I think especially for the younger batches, because I remember last year, I had like 2 internships, right? But then I remember this freshman I knew, she had like 3 already. I was like, whoa, they are full of energy. Like, I guess it's because back then as a freshman and a sophomore, I was like going to like Lan Kwai, like
Lan Kwai?
Yeah, I was like going out after school, having fun. I was thinking about internships. If I was thinking of one, it was going from Ateneo to Makati and then eating out with my friends. So it was really more fun. And then I see these like kids and I'm like, oh my, I also felt pressure myself because like, oh my gosh, these kids are like juggling internship after internship. Like, what about me? And so I think 2020 was a bit tough for me because like, as I said, like 2 internships, 2 freelance projects, etc., etc. And that December, like I literally had to stop. And you know, my New Year's resolution was like, this year I'm not taking a single internship. Like I really told that to myself. Like I was like, I'm not taking, but it isn't because like I was tired of learning. I also felt like because I took in so much commitments, and I was also an org leader, mind you. So because I took up so much commitments, there was no time to like feed the other stuff I was interested to learn. I felt like I was interested in so many things, but because I was already committed to so much, like I was limited to it, even if I wasn't sure it was the path I wanted to go. I just had so much commitments. I couldn't like further tend to the other stuff I was interested in. So yeah, I think aside from relaxing and enjoying, enjoying, it doesn't have to mean like it doesn't have to be you on Instagram the whole day, you on Netflix the whole day. You can still enjoy and learn and stuff like that. So I think that's what I learned in 2021. Like, yeah, I didn't intern for anything, but I learned so much other stuff by myself. So that was cool. That was a cool experience too.
I just want to add, because I realized my advice is very one-dimensional. I don't want to be a bad influence.
Go on.
I don't want to be the ate that
Go
gets
on.
people drunk, you know what I mean? But if, like, this is speaking now to the people who feel so unsure that it almost feels like a sense of parang frozen. Like you don't know where to go because there are too many options. And I'm sharing this because I'm that. Like, when I have too many options, I just freeze. My biggest learning is just choose. Like, a bad decision is better than no decision, right? Or like a bad internship is better than no internship, or a bad org position is better than no org position. Because no matter how awful that is, like Jong said kanina, that's still going to be growth. Even if it was a negative experience, you're going to know not to look for that, or to look for telltale signs that it might be taking you on this path again, and let's turn right. You don't want that, right? So if you're feeling frozen, just choose something, do something, apply for whatever, send your resume to whatever. And, don't get too stressed about how good it's going to be, or the quality of it, or the quantity of it. Like, I think Louis said this, showing up is half the battle. So just show up and the rest will follow. Well said.
Thank you so much, especially in like we're first year students and second year. Like, it's really heartwarming to hear that from you guys, and we all needed to hear that. And thank you for all that advice. I'm sure our listeners are really going to take notes and follow your advice. And now we will give you the floor to promote your projects and what you are working on right now. Jong.
Okay, so yeah, shout out to MeetBit, the startup I'm working on right now with my friends. Not really a promotion, but I guess I also want to tell you guys that it is possible. So my friends started it actually because they were heads in BYTE, and they were like, the way we schedule things are super sucky. Let's make something. And they literally just made the software, and now they're fundraising. It's an actual legitimate startup that is registered in the States. So that's pretty cool, right? I think more than telling you guys to sign up, but you should. Yeah, it's pretty cool. I hope you take this story as an inspiration. Like Joanna said, just try it. Just take the leap. Like raising your hand is the halfway through the battle, or something like that. Yeah. Okay. How about you, Joanna?
How about you, Joanna?
So I'm actually gonna plug something. So my company, like I mentioned earlier, we manufacture and we sell Zenutrients and Curls by Zenutrients, as well as Nature's Nutrients. 3 brands. There's a lot of them I know. If anything, just check out zenutrients.com.ph or nanoph.com. That's where all of our amazing products are sold. You can also find us on Shopee, Lazada, Beauty Manila, Edamama, Kumu, everything. Just search Zenutrients. You can even Google Zenutrients. Will show up. We're on Instagram and Facebook. If you like the Philippines, if you like good shampoo, conditioner, if you like organic, natural stuff, we are the brand for you.
Okay, thank you so much. And with that, I hope our listeners have the time to check these out. And thank you so much for today's episode, Juliana and Jong.
That was a really valuable talk with Jong and Joanna. I guess what I learned is that showing up is already half the battle, and that many people underestimate the power of it. And one more thing would be that indecision and not making a decision is costly when you factor in opportunity cost. It was great to be reminded of the fact that our youth is a gift that we all may only enjoy and work on once in our lifetime, and that we still have our whole lives ahead of us.
That's so true, Bradley. And I think one memorable insight I learned is it's always better to choose. It's better to have said, at least I tried this thing out, rather than what if I tried. I really think it's those small choices that we make that give us the best learning experiences. A bad decision is better than no decision, like what Joanna said. And although there were negative experiences, there are the moments that continue to form us and allow us to grow. Thank you very much for tuning in to BYTECamp. And if you enjoyed this episode, make sure to like and follow BYTE on Facebook, Instagram, and even LinkedIn.
Catch BYTECamp's next episode with Javi Lorenzana about starting a business.
And stay tuned for more BYTECamp episodes. And stay updated on our Facebook page because you might just win some cool prizes.